Hello? Can you
All
hear
right.
me?
Yeah.
All right, we're testing all of this, so y'all
Good.
got to bear
Good.
with me. Huh?
Okay. Oh,
Yeah. I
have
have a
you
quick.
used? Oh, sorry.
Huh?
I'm sorry. I have a quick question. In what capacity am I participating?
Well, you can tell them that you participated with the advocacy last week around the school. You can let them know
Okay.
you're a member of the branch. The branch supported that
Right. The reason
process.
why I'm asking is, needless to say, I don't want to be stepping in somebody else's lane. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just speak
The
on
chair.
behalf of the because what we're trying to frame is what they did, and they built a big coalition to combat that nonsense. So
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
the
That's fine.
yeah.
Yeah.
All
But I'll
right.
mention that I'm, part of a couple of other organizations that participated as well. Alpha and Southern Maryland Minority Chamber, and then of course I'm
Yeah.
a member of the NAACP branch as well.
Right. And I invited them, the ladies on. So
Good. That's
hopefully,
That's what
yeah,
I didn't get a chance to follow up with yesterday because I got your message when I was on my way up the road.
yeah, I don't think they'll have a problem. I don't think it's a problem. It was successful and it's a lot of
Yeah.
work to do from here. So you'll be fine. So, so basically, I made a mistake and I didn't know how to pre-record. I didn't know. So the goal was to have the show aired for tomorrow. And I can't do it tomorrow. So I was trying to record it today. And so that's the kind of situation I'm in. But it was I didn't click pre-record and I print. We're going live. So I don't know how this is going to work out, but we will make it happen.
Okay. Whatever you need.
So basically, I'll we'll get to business because I invited a few other people. If they come on, we'll just work it out. But we're just going to have a conversation about the work that everybody's doing. Aisha is the chair of health for the state NAACP, but
Oh, okay.
she is also works with the Living Legacy Foundation. I think they have a new name, but she's going to be doing work at the state level to have this conversation about our people and organ transplants and the education on the front end, because it's usually the case that we kind of normalize having being on dialysis, which is painful and expensive. So that's what she's doing that work.
Okay. Pleasure meeting you virtually.
Hi, nice to meet you as well.
So we can get down to business in a few seconds. All right. All right, Miss McCauley.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess so. All right, peace. All right, let's go. How you doing? This is Willie Flowers. How goes the hour with the Maryland State Conference NAACP? We're trying to give the whole state an idea of what NAACP is doing throughout the state. As what they call Maryland is America in miniature. And I didn't understand what that meant until I had to do a campaign. It took me all over the state. So you got mountains, you got oceans, you got everything. You got all you can do. And it's all good. But the reality is, when we talk about civil rights, social justice, and that kind of stuff, things don't always plan out the way they do. And what we're trying to do and consistently to do with the NAACP is stay relevant as it pertains to creating right relationships in the community. So the NAACP is an organization that people can turn to because they trust us to work and fight for them. And they also believe that we can help them find a solution to, we don't want it to be pain, but sometimes it is painful. But one thing that we're doing, especially at this time in our history, as a way to expand what we do with civil rights work, social justice work, is to pay attention to mutual aid, which means doing things in the community that bring people together, not just because we want them to be members, but it is the case that if we're doing something as simple as a community garden, if we're doing something as a blood drive, it creates a discussion about mutual aid so that we're not just coming to you to get a membership from the NAACP or to vote in that election or to do a rally, but we're doing things in the community. So a few of those things include partnerships that we have. We have a substantial partnership with the Living Legacy Foundation, which is an organ transplant organization um, in Maryland. And we have Aisha Johnson on board. She came on board this year as the chair of our health committee. She's been doing this work for years, and she is a strong voice to bring out the details. And I don't like to use the word education, but the information families need so that we don't have this reality that I don't know about anybody else, but I know a lot of people who exist, their lives are determined by their dialysis treatment, and to be on this dialysis machine and going to these, I guess it's called a treatment, but you have to go at least 2 or 3 times a week. When the other option is to have get the right kidney or to have a living donor. And I didn't know about all these details until I was kind of made aware of it through Aisha and the Living Legacy Foundation, and then my own family. My father-in-law had an enlarged heart. He literally had to have a heart transplant. It was, a very challenging period for the family, but he got the heart. He lived a little longer. And I just think that there are a lot of things that we can do with education that can prepare a family if you get into this situation. So I want to introduce Aisha so she can give you an idea of what her vision is to spread this message. And her work is not just about organ transplants either, but it's also about other details. It's something as simple that is common. I mentioned blood donations. All of these details require information so we don't feel insecure, or the information is important, and that's the work that she does. So I want to introduce Miss Aisha Johnson.
Thank you, Willie. I'm blessed to be here today to talk about this, and as part of my duties with the NAACP and the committee, outside of focusing on kidney disease prevention and organ donation, we also want to talk about invisible disabilities, or ID, and cardiovascular disease as well. And I don't think a lot of people know that there are many people walking around with an ID, and that can range from being autistic on the spectrum, depression, anxiety, chronic pain, and it's a stigma with that, and we don't talk about it enough. And that's something that, as part of my role as state chair for the health committee, I want to bring that to the forefront and see how we can support one another and inform, since we don't want to overuse the word education. Outside of that, when it comes to kidney disease and prevention, African Americans are the #1 on the national wait list waiting for a kidney. And most of the time you're on dialysis from 3 to 9 years waiting for a transplant. And we're not talking about living donation enough. And there's a lot of misinformation about being a living donor, and getting that national registry pushed out by Donate Life America in the next year or two, people can be more informed about living donation. Maryland passed a law about 4 years ago on a tax credit for someone who is a living donor to someone else, because you are spending money on your surgery for someone else, where it benefits the recipient, but not you as the donor. And another thing I want to talk about is cardiovascular disease. In the state of Maryland, the #1 cause of death is cardiac disease. And for Black people, it is cardiac disease. So what are we doing to partner with the American Heart Association and with other organizations to educate people on being healthy, or talking to their physician, going to the doctor, and not using the ER as your PCP. So there's a lot of things that we can do that I hope we can push out through the entire state and our branches on more education, awareness, prevention. So Willie, it's a lot of work to be done, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Well, we have to, the goal is to bite off the pieces that you can, make happen. So, and like you said, it does start with information. Can you give us an example of, you mentioned invisible disabilities. Can you give us examples of invisible disabilities so people know what that means?
Like I mentioned before, depression, that someone is suffering from depression, that's an ID. Someone who is on the autism spectrum disorder, so you're not fully autistic, that's an ID. Chronic pain, insomnia, there are many things that can be considered as an invisible disability.
Right. And then, so our interest, so everybody knows, and she brought this to the table, our interest is in some of these cases, people are insecure about even talking about it. Just like any other disease, and you can be half dead, and family members don't even tell you that they had cancer, but because of insecurity, whatever. And these invisible disabilities are kind of the same way, and it affects people in their jobs because they don't want people to know that they have these challenges or whatever. So the conversation then become, what is the policy that we can apply so that you have I don't think you call it being a whistleblower, but you have protection that allows you to keep your job without the public knowledge of what your challenge is. Does that fit into I guess the American with Disabilities Act at any level?
Yeah, so I was listening to a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and Microsoft actually had just hired a chief assessment officer. I'm sorry, accessibility officer. I apologize. That their whole job is to make sure that they hire a certain amount of people who consider themselves having an ID. So that way you can give someone who may have Down syndrome a job that is skilled at doing something that someone else may not be as skilled as, because we're not looking at them as a disability. And we want to make sure that that term is not used in a negative way. Having a disability is not a bad thing. And we all may, from someone suffering from minor hearing loss, that's an ID. So we want to make sure that we're educating people that don't be afraid to say you may be suffering from an ID, and allow family, friends, your job to make adjustments. And that goes back to even someone with vision issues that looking at a website that's not color coded the right way per the ADA, that is an ID. So it's
Right.
a lot to learn about, actually.
Right. And so everybody knows our goal is to create the atmosphere for support groups that I think that's necessary. I mean, I see the benefit of doing the same thing. I guess Susan B. Coleman did with breast cancer, and just using every avenue to spread awareness. So be on the lookout for that. So that's one thing. Now I know that this conversation about organ transplants, as you know, our first meeting was like, you can't sell this to Black folks because there's so many conspiracy theories. There's so many some anxieties because of the history of the ethics of medical science and Black folks. And we saw this with COVID. But now it is still the case that with COVID, with everything else, we have the reality that our people, like I say, our people suffer from the lack of knowledge and all that. The reality is that we still have in the longest lines for all of the preventable diseases there are. It's just the way it is. Whatever the reason it is, how do you roll out the conversation about the consideration of being a transplant donor? How do you, I guess, get families ready for situations where your family member can live longer if somebody steps up and give up a kidney? How do you have that conversation?
Right. For us, well, we know a lot of people don't like to talk about end of life decisions. People don't like to talk about what's going to happen next and what to do when they pass away or a loved one passes away. So I've been doing community outreach for almost 12 years now when it comes to organ donation and transplantation. I myself, I'm a tissue recipient. There was a need that I thought I had cancer, and I had a mass growing in my hand, and I needed donor bone from a tissue donor. And 9 times out of 10, we're not thinking about it until someone is affected by it. right? So, Willie, I'm asking you, did you ever think about donation until your father-in-law needed a heart? And I think that's where the education and the information comes from, is that we're informing people and inspiring them to make an informed decision about donation, whether you say yes or no. And it's talking, and I'm moving away from register as an organ donor, but can we prevent you from needing a transplant in the first place, right? And that is our goal, is to talk about prevention on kidney disease and people having diabetes and things that are preventable, because you will probably wait on a wait list for a kidney up to 9 years versus someone who needs a heart, lung, or liver, which are, you're more sicker and you're not on a dialysis treatment plan to wait that long. And it's basically storytelling. It's finding people who were affected by donation, whether they were a donor family member or they were a recipient, and showing like-minded people just like me. I said yes to donation and I got a gift from someone who passed away.
Well, that's beautiful work. Like I said, as you know, I consider myself committed to trying to to navigate this, and I think that we all can be ambassadors to the information. I don't think that it's fair for anyone, and we all do it. If you grew up a Christian, you want to evangelize to whatever because we think that you can do this, but the reality is, the most that we can do is give people the information. So. Can you tell them how they can reach out to you to get the information, particularly in the space with Living Legacy Foundation?
Yes, our website is www.thellf.org. So that is www.thellf.org. And you can look at our website. We have a page dedicated to community outreach, how to get involved, how to get information. And right now we're pushing our grassroots campaign, which Willie knows a lot about, is the Decision Project. And that is a grassroots campaign that's focused on marginalized communities or those that are underrepresented and underserved, to give back to our communities outside of organ donation, and let them think about Living Legacy in a different light, where we're a trusted organization. We're there to help with grief support, trauma support, homicide services, funeral home. We're more than just organ donation. And that's what I want to educate about first. And then if something happens down the line, you either made that decision or you didn't, but like Willie said, you're informed about it.
So tell us a little about you, and we're gonna move to the next guest, but tell us a little about you. So how you got into this business, why you got into it, and why you stayed, because you could go anywhere. So
just funny, we just had our ceremony of remembrance when I had to tell my tissue story. So about 20 years ago, my best friend invited me to an event, and I had no idea what the event was about, and it was called the Donor Remembrance Ceremony. And I didn't know anything about organ donation and transplantation. I'm originally from California. And that day, hearing stories about how lives were saved through that gift, I decided to be an organ donor. But I was also excited about the work she was doing. And 5 years later, I started working in the hospital services side, which more is a clinical department, where my job was to educate the physicians and nurses about donation, because only 5% of us will ever be able to be an organ donor. Most of us will die of a cardiac death, and your organs will not be in a situation where you can be a donor. But my heart was always outreach. And when I moved to Maryland, I noticed that Baltimore City, especially, we were more reactive when it came to education and not proactive. And that's when I joined the community outreach department, and a few years later became the manager, and recently the director. And the reason why I love doing what I do, because people don't know what they don't know. And if I'm able to share my story with others and show them that we care more than about the yes, that we actually care about our communities, that's what's important to me. And
all right.
That's my story.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You can hang around, or you can jump off, and whatever you want to do. But thank you for presenting. All right. I know that Miss Vicky has a meeting, a hard stop. So, Brother Edsel, I know you're going to be okay with letting the lady go first, right? Excellent, excellent. So I want to unmute yourself, Miss. Unmute yourself, Miss Vicky Jones. She is the branch president. I keep unmuting you.
Right, we keep we keep unmuting each other.
She's
Yeah,
she's the
right.
branch president in Harford County, and she's new to the job, but she's not new to doing community work. She's not new to being an organizer, administrator, any of that. So when she got into the job, like all of us, she had to learn, and Brother Brown knows about this. No, she had to understand the ways of the NAACP. And if you can do that and apply what your skills are and your talents are, you can be successful. And she's gotten off to a great start. She can talk about that. But I also want her to frame it, because Harford County has a lot of stuff going on. If you pay attention to what was going on, I think it was 2 years ago, we had one of their Democratic delegates who used the word nigger district, referring to Prince George's County. And just last week, we had another Republican delegate from the same district, I think, who used the B word in reference to the Speaker of the House. Now, um, um, the connection between the same women saying different women saying the same thing from the same district, which was insulting to Black folks, has been lost on everybody else for a lot of reasons. But I want to invite Miss Vicky to tell us what she's doing up there, and we can talk about the other stuff later.
Yes, and just to also add on to that, we had another delegate who on the House floor who used a racist trope. So it's not lost on us, and I think that's one of the challenges in Harford County is that are working with our elected officials to get them to understand and even pay attention to the African American community is a struggle and a challenge. Many are born here and raised here and have different beliefs and don't really value the Black vote or anything that is an asset to our community. So that is a big challenge. But one of the things that I've been doing in the county is really trying to focus this year, and particularly on building the branch, the membership of the branch, and also the youth membership. We've started to really think about what a youth works committee might look like. And our second vice president is working with youth and with Harford County Public Schools to try to build that group up. And for membership, when I first came to the branch, our membership had dropped off significantly, and it really wasn't growing much, especially because of COVID. But I didn't see that as something that should stop us. Because of COVID, I think there are some unique things that we can take advantage of. And one of those things is online. And I know how to use technology and I know how to use online. So that's what I did. And I think with a lot of the branches, especially, branches that have been around for a long time, they may not know how to use technology or be comfortable with it. So one of the first things that I did was starting immediately using Facebook. That was a great way to reach out to people. I had been a part of some other social justice social groups. So I knew that there could be some influence there. And because of that, reaching out to the different groups, reaching out to one person at a time, we've been able to grow our membership on Facebook by 215% just in the last year.
Wow.
So that really translates into memberships, right? So people are going to see, they're going to be interested, they're going to be excited about our content, and they're going to say, I will pay that money to join this branch. And that's exactly what happened. Just this quarter alone, we've had 19 new members. And that was our goal for this year was 10% more than we had over our total last year. So I'm pleased to say that we've already met our goal. And I think that we can do, more than that. For me, I think of organizing as reaching one person at a time. So if I see someone who has an interest, I'm going to ask if they want to be involved. I found in this work and in my professional life that unless you ask people, they probably are not going to raise their hand. So I think that's a critical part of organizing, to make sure that you feel confident in being able to ask someone to join or for their help. And what I started to find is that people would say yes, that they'd been waiting for me to ask them to be involved in a particular way. And once you get them involved in one way, they will become comfortable and want to be involved in other ways. So we've built our branch, one person at a time, on social media, on the ground. I'm very proud of the fact that our executive committee is diverse. I am always tickled to tell folks that we have, especially white folks that I speak to at different events, that 25% of my leadership is white. And so that's really key to make sure that our branch is representing all of the ideas of our community.
So I know that you became president, and people need to understand this, in the middle, not only in the middle of quarantine or the pandemic, but also as this this energy was on the rise about anti critical race theory and vaccine nations and masking and all this. And people don't know that it kind of got heated in your neck of the woods first. What was your experience with that?
So, that if folks remember, I think it was in August at a school board meeting, that's when really you could tell that things were out of hand. The news media was here, and we had people that were banging on the windows of the Board of Education, making threats. We had the Proud Boys come to our county, and some of our residents were taking pictures with them. We've seen different stickers and postings about the Patriot Front, around our town. So, this was here before, but the pandemic made it worse, and also emboldened people to feel like that they had the right and the opportunity to do this. So the way that we've been able to address this is by making sure that we have folks, on the ground who are watching these things and watching for these things. We have stepped up our presence at county council meetings and also Board of Education meetings, and make statements on a regular basis. So now people can see and they know who the NAACP is, and that whether or not we're going to disagree with something, I think what's been really powerful is communication. And sure, people want to do rallies and protests. But for me, the biggest protest is to make sure that we get out and vote these people out. But also just to make sure that we're aware of the different issues, that my team is aware, that we're all on board, and that we're communicating in writing, as well as speaking out to let people know what we're about and what we will stand for.
Excellent. So you also took the mantle of chair of membership for the state conference.
Yes.
You got any big plans in that space?
Well, thank you very much. I'm excited about the position. I'm in that learning phase right now, but I know I can't take too much time there. The biggest thing that I'd like to do is really use some of the skills and the tactics that I did for growing the membership of the local branch for the state. Part of that is connecting with the different membership chairs and presidents in the state, talking about their strategy for increasing their membership and really creating a statewide strategy so that we can make sure that we're a stronger branch and that we have a presence, in all aspects of what we do, and that our membership is diverse as well.
Now you have to tell them, you can close out on this, tell them what you do professionally so they know that you have the ability, because you work with one of the biggest membership organizations on the planet, right?
I do. So in my day job, I work for AARP, and it is a large advocacy organization. We usually advocate for people that are 50 plus. And my area of expertise in the association right now is around strategy and community development. My past experience is also working for large nonprofit organizations and for government organizations, typically around workforce development, community development, and advocacy.
All right. Thank you. Anything else you want to share? Because while you had the challenge of the heat coming from the Proud Boys or whoever, the conservatives or Confederates or whatever C word, it went right over to Calvert County, the other C word. So
Mhm.
we're excited to introduce for a couple of reasons because Brother Edsel Brown, I call him brother because he is a alpha man, but he also, while we're both alpha men, Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity, he's also was the chair of economic development for the Maryland State Conference for a number of years. He did some tremendous work there when there was a funding line for doing projects in the state, and he headed that. But he's also a member of the Calvert County branch, and it just happened that we talked about this in a couple other shows about the same thing that happened to you in Harford County. It went right over to Calvert County, and it was kind of in a larger way because they were pushing the advocacy around those areas. But all of a sudden, while they were doing that on the outside, the very organized and professional Calvert County Board of Education that did everything they could do because it was time to hire a new superintendent. It wasn't like they revealed; it was a public meetings, public process. But because the anti everything people were outside doing it, when they opened the door, they announced that they have two finalists and they're both Black. And when I tell you that they lost they ever loving minds, they lost it. So we were called in for a lot of reasons, but when we came in, the community got organized. And I'm gonna let Brother Edsel Brown explain to you what I didn't know because I had never been to their school board meetings. But according to everybody, these were the most well attended school board meetings in the history of that county. And it was for the purpose of allowing the Board of Education to do their business, to a selection process of a superintendent is one of the most important things you can do in a school district. And you shouldn't be distracted by nonsense. And they made it plain. Brother Edsel stepped up, and several organizations he collaborated with, the branch, members of the branch who were concerned about it, created a coalition, and they shut it down. So I want Brother Edsel Brown to chime in.
Appreciate it. The first thing I want to say is I'm going to thank you for coming down, Willie. Willie didn't share the fact that he came down for, I believe, the last two meetings of the Board of Education. And, as was indicated already, what was going on in Hartford, unfortunately, we have too much of that happening in counties across Maryland. And I've lived in Calvert for like 20 years, and it's an interesting place to live. I love it. I'll be honest. I love it because I love the water, but we have our challenges, and our challenges aren't behind us. They're in front of us. And what took place with the Board of Education, I think, is a microcosm of what needs to change in Calvert in general. One thing that Willie didn't point out is the fact that 3 out of the 5 members of, I think it's 5 members of the board, I'm almost positive it's 5 members of the board, are African American. So when you look at the electorate in Calvert County, and then you think about 3 out of the 5 members being African American, that's almost shocking by itself. But the 3 members are very professional, they're very competent, and it's a blessing that they are and were, because it takes very strong-minded and determined individuals to endure the storm that they had to deal with that Willie was pointing out. The last several sessions of the Board of Education were very interesting, to say the very least. And at this time, I really want to salute our chair of our education committee, Deborah Harris, because Debbie was the one that really grabbed the bull by the horns and provided the leadership that our branch was able to provide. It was Deborah's leadership. And Deborah, again, she would report back to the executive committee what was taking place, as the storm really started to develop and what was, forthcoming. And then once those finalists, the last 2 finalists were African American, that's when the lid blew off of it. And again, it should be pointed out that there was an impartial search committee that brought the candidates there, and it was a very thorough evaluation of those candidates to be weeded down to the 2. But of course, as that process took place, and as it came down to 2 African Americans, There were a lot of unhappy folks in the county, and in Calvert County, they tend to be outspoken, and let's just say they can get very off the chain. We've got some posters in our county that if you came, say, from Baltimore and came down here and saw those posters, and they tend to focus on the president and the vice president, but there's been some very unkind things posted on there that they're shocked. I won't say almost, they're shocking. And unfortunately, you see them all the time. I don't say you become used to it, but in some respects you do. It's just off the hook. And we've approached the police department and the county about what can be done to take those signs down, but the people that are putting them up always fall just on the side that they can keep it up there. But again, some of the information on there is shocking. But again, as Willie indicated, through Deborah's leadership and other members, but mainly Deborah, she started reporting back to us, and a few times that she would speak at these meetings, there were only a handful of us there, and you had crowds there basically just, very obnoxious and, calling names and everything else. So she got the word out to the community. I belong, just like probably all of us on this session today, we belong to several different organizations. And we made it a point to everybody at our executive board meetings to start letting everybody know that this isn't just NAACP's fights. This is our community in Calvert's fight, and to spread the word, to our other organizations. And I will say that, we have a number of white members on our executive board now, as well as participating in our branch meetings. In some respects, going virtual has really helped because we got more people to attend our meetings, and they got the word out to their organizations as well. So the last two sessions before they formally announced on the 24th of March, they just made the announcement on 24th of March, were well attended. And, we made it a point to go there to really support, the decision that the board was going to make, because the decision was actually announced on the 24th, that we wanted to, those folks that were raising a lot of cane at the meetings to know that the community was there, and we weren't going to tolerate them just, acting the fool, so to speak. So we had very good turnout, and those part of each Board of Education meeting, they would have their regular meeting, and they would allow up to 10 people to comment on, anything that the board was doing. And the last two sessions, I would say all but one or two of those 10 that spoke were speaking out in support of whatever decision the board was going to make. And that, as a community, you may not like whatever the decision is going to make, but you need to support this superintendent, because at the end of the day, we will all want our children to have a good education. And again, the announcement was made on the 24th. And again, just about everybody was there. There may have been a handful of people that disagreed with the decision, but most people there agreed with the decision. But from my perspective, this is a line in the sand, because now we have a Black superintendent, but his work really starts now, because there's no question in my mind that he is going to be scrutinized to the nth degree, and that the support that we provided to him, and not just to him, but to the Board of Education that made that decision, because they had to endure countless social media postings, telephone calls that were really challenging them. And again, they went to the police department to let them know that, they're concerned about their physical safety. And basically the response was, it hasn't risen to the level that we need to interact. So the community really needs to continue to support the incoming superintendent, as well as the members of the board. And also the fact that the folks that disagreed with the decision of the board to select the person that they selected, they're doing all they can to unseat those board members that are going to be up for election. So our community really has to be proactive to keep our eye on the prize, to get out and vote more so than ever, because it can go from one extreme to the other. And again, I bring back to the focus that this superintendent is going to be under the microscope. So that will be my initial feedback, Willie.
Right. So what I saw, and I was very impressed with this. It wasn't so everybody understands these conservatives, Confederates, and I emphasize whatever C word.
Right.
um, they're not just coming at black folks; they're coming at anybody who
Hmm.
doesn't fit into their idea of what public schools should be.
Yep.
If you see the stuff happening in Florida, it's not an attack on just black folks. They went after LGBTQ students, people, residents of Florida, that is, with the legislation they passed down there. And that spirit is the same spirit that's in Calvert County, that was up there in Harford County and in Howard County, anywhere they can get 10 or 15 people to rally with them. And
Yep.
what happened in Calvert County was impressive because the organizers brought all those people together who were being marginalized. I'm talking LGBTQ. I'm talking about anybody with a child in the school. The whole coalition was there. And you know, if that type of response doesn't happen, and I've been very critical of the Democratic Party right now, because while this is happening, and you can point to Virginia and see that this type of organizing on the ground helps with everything at the top of the ballot. So in Virginia, they were doing this organizing. The Democratic Party didn't respond to it, and a year after you elect and win in Virginia with President Biden, and you also win with the U.S. Congress senator down there. 1 year later, you lose the governor, you lose the lieutenant governor, you use the attorney general, and you lose. I think they lost the majority in the House and the Senate because they didn't respond to it. The response in Calvert County is what has to happen. You have to stand up to a bully. And what I saw in that episode in Calvert County was when you stand up to bully, because there was only one elected official who showed up, a lady named Grasso,
Yeah.
and she came and she was supposed to speak, but she didn't, because the tide had turned. And
Exactly.
so what ended up happening in this episode, I keep using the word episode, in this situation, um, was the energy shifted. And as opposed to them doing their version of January 6th again, they were outnumbered, they were outgunned. And so she didn't even speak. She gave somebody else her speech because she didn't want to look like, I don't know why she did it, but it was clear that she was set to speak. They announced that she was going to speak, and she didn't. And when I turned around, the whole back area where she was sitting, all those people were gone. I have a picture of that. So I just want to express that y'all did a great job, and everybody should stand up the same way, because while it seemed like it was, you should be excited about a new superintendent, but there should not have been that buildup with the expectation of something negative happening. It should have been just like the vote went down. It was yay, 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 and you had one person abstain because whatever his story was, but he gave the story about him falling down or something, and he was
He's a
not
commissioner.
yeah, it was weird. So I want to just emphasize that this is what it's going to take, y'all. It's going to take us
Sorry, excuse me,
organizing.
my lights in my office went out since I've been moving around. There they
You
go.
gotta pay that. Oh, I thought you said you had to pay the light bill. Uh, but this is what we have to do.
Didn't pay the
And
light bill, right?
the party can't do it, and it's not on the Democratic Party to do it alone. We have to do it, but it's on them to win those seats, though. So if they don't put the same energy into their into community activities like these, they're not gonna have seats to run for. So I hope that y'all continue. I know there's some big races in your county. I know you have a young delegate. Her name is Delegate Jones. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, Rachel Jones. Yeah.
Rachel Jones. She's new in her job. I know that 2 or 3 of those at-large seats on your school board are up. I hope that y'all can get the chair, Madam Chair, to Pamela Cousins. I hope y'all can get her to run for re-election, but I think that she made a commitment to doing 2 terms. So I just wish you luck down there, man. I don't think it's over. I do think that what I saw and the energy there, and yeah, and the population shifts because I know Charles County is getting a lot of. They have a majority black county right now, um, and I think that you're getting some of those residents in Calvert County. So as these populations change, all that stuff has got to change. So I
Well,
wish y'all luck. I hope y'all can organize around it to be successful. Tell us a little about what you're working on otherwise, because I know that you were there representing a few organizations. Tell
well,
us about the other work you do.
well, one thing that we're really trying to do in Calvert, and I'm sure all of us are trying to do the same thing, but you really underscored a key point. You know, most of the things we do down here isn't really just our county, Calvert, St. Mary's, or Charles County. We're really trying to develop a sense of collaboration because, again, if we have an issue, say in Calvert, we're talking about the school board and the issues with the superintendent. The other organizations that I belong to, and we encourage others to really pull in your organizations here because, it's not just our fight, it's our fight, all of our fight. Because if you have an issue, say in Charles, we want to come over there and get your back. And same in St. Mary's, we want to get your back if something happens. So I think that's the most important thing going on is to really build up these networks so that we're always available to support one another. And not just when things are down, we're planning on having, matter of fact, on behalf of our beloved fraternity, we're going to have a big Black Expo in August during National Black Business Month. And we're working with about 5 or 6 other organizations, and we're really trying to get all of the Divine Nine down here in Southern Maryland as well to get on board. Because again, though, we're sort of leading it, we've got 7 or 8 other organizations getting involved in it because entrepreneurship doesn't have a moniker on it. If you have a business, it's your business, regardless of what other organization you belong to. So we're really using that as a means to foster opportunities for the small businesses as well as for the public to see what kind of great businesses we have down here in Southern Maryland. I'm the new chair of the Southern Maryland Minority Chamber of Commerce. And the same type of thing, we're reaching out to try to figure out what we can do to highlight more of our minority small businesses, again, for economic development across the board in all 3 counties. So it's very important for us, again, the buzzword is collaboration.
That sounds good. Can you give us a brief overview of the economic development work that you did when you were the chair of the NAACP?
Well, one thing I'll say, I'll use that same term with the state NAACP is collaboration and working together. One thing, as Willie indicated, is we were lucky enough, probably for about 4 or 5 years while I was chair, that there was grant money available from National to conduct economic activities. And one of the main things that we did was we did a lot of financial workshops across the state. And one thing that I really found was how organized the Eastern Shore was when it came to economic development. I mean, I like the way that they worked. So, when we were looking to do a workshop on the Eastern Shore, it wasn't, say, like Cecil County or one particular county. They would work together. So they would figure out, what would be the best at that time whenever we were having them to have a session in a particular county, and then they would all come. They would all come down there, organize, and then they would take, what was learned there, and they would share it with their respective counties. But again, they would share resources, etc. And when we got the grant money, the same thing. They would always share. So again, I would underscore that spirit of collaboration and how important it is. We're talking about civil rights, but how important it is to create increased opportunities for our economic development. And the bottom line is knowledge is power. You don't know what you don't know. And, even if you just have a few financial type workshops and, this is tax season, maybe have a CPA come in and talk about, preparing your taxes, something like that. And it kills 2 birds with the same stone. One, enlightening and providing information to our base, but also it's going to be highlighting whoever's making that presentation is going to help with their economic development of their business. Yeah.
Right. And it's just an extension of the conversation we had earlier about what we can do in regard to mutual aid and community outreach, because, you don't know what you don't know. That's a very common term these days, and it's true.
Yeah.
And so, and sometimes we're afraid to ask for help. But if we normalize the type of support you need, it's not something that, you have to ask for. The information is there. So I want to thank you for all the work you've done and continue to do down there. It's a big deal. And you have to tell people that you retired from the SBA. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So
3
that
years
type
ago.
of information, that type of information along is good for people who are trying to start businesses, because there's a lot of anxiety. I mean, nobody's going to tell you not to start a business. And if you talk to them long enough, they're going to tell you about the number of businesses that didn't make it. You know what I'm saying? Because there are more businesses that don't make it. But the fact is that if you, get nestled into it and get the information you need, you can keep your business alive, and you can do some good, and the economic development piece is extremely important when it comes to
if I may, that's one thing. If people get nothing else on the economic side of things, is success leaves tracks. And, unfortunately, a lot of us aren't really plugged into what we need to promote our business, to move our particular business forward. And, we've got to do more to share the collective expertise that we have available in our community, because there's a lot of expertise out here. But again, you don't know what you don't know. If you don't know a particular person, or if you're not familiar with what the capabilities are from a small business development center, which provides a lot of free service, you wouldn't know. You may wind up paying some consultant an exorbitant amount of money where you could have got the assistance for free.
And there's a lot of shifts happening right now that I think are going to help business. I think the bill was Senate Bill 632. And what Senate Bill 632 does is it provides a supplement for health coverage for people who have small businesses and nonprofits. And that's something that's coming down the pipe. It was transferred to a summer study this year to kind of take a look at the pieces of it. But the goal overall is to have a situation where small businesses can have supplements to provide health coverage to their employees, as well as nonprofits. And that you got to incentivize people these days, or you're not going to have any people. And healthcare should be just something that is a part of working, but it's not. And the smaller the company, the less chance you have to have a health coverage or any type of benefits. So, and I heard about it, I was happy because in 1992, when Clinton was the rise of the discussion about universal health care, the first criticism when they started pushing it was small businesses say we can't afford that, and they saw the end to something that should have been a right. So it's taken that's like 30 years later that people are talking about it at the state level of providing health coverage to supplement businesses so that they can keep good employees. Nobody wants to not. I've been in a situation where I have had to lay off people because I couldn't offer health coverage to them. And in my situation, the people who were working for me, we had an Affordable Care Act grant, and I couldn't give them health care, and they're trying to expand health care to other people. So I was so happy to hear about that bill. I hope it passes, and I hope that people can benefit from it, because never know when you're going to need it. So I want to thank both of you. We're 10 minutes out. Hopefully we can have some further discussion about the details of what you're both working on. And then in the case with Aisha, we're going to connect in Howard County. We're going to try to connect the invisible disability conversation to the anniversary of Juneteenth. And we're planning a 5K to specifically talk about invisible disabilities and connect that to the legacy of Harriet Tubman as well, because what people may have picked up on from the movie, Mother Prophet Harriet Tubman, she had an invisible disability. She had, I think she had narcolepsy, epilepsy or something, um, and she had to fight through that her entire life, I'm sure. But that's a highlight on somebody we admire, and she made it happen anyway, with or without the mental health challenge that she was living with. She pushed through, and I think she lived to be like 90, right? Or she was
Yeah.
very old.
Mhm.
So our
She's
goal
up
is to
there.
try to connect that conversation to people like her, and there are plenty other leaders who have had some type of challenge that we don't know about. But the opportunity to try to push this conversation about invisible disabilities, and then the subsequent conversation about organ donations and also blood donations is something that's important. And it's a significant piece of mutual aid that we can contribute and help to expand with the vast network that's the NAACP, because we're in every county. I want to emphasize, and we got two of them in in Baltimore County. So if we don't do something good in those counties, then why are we here?
Okay.
So I want to keep everybody plugged in. And the goal of this, I'm continuing to call it a pilot because I'm figuring out the glitches in this podcast world. But
I
the
can give
pilot.
you a lesson, Willie, on
Okay. Oh, I forgot. Yeah, this
give you
woman
a
can do
StreamYard
everything.
lesson.
Yeah. So the goal is to celebrate what we're doing. Again, we got 25 counties, and we have 25 branches in each of those. We have college chapters and youth councils, and we even have AXO programs. And we do this work kind of in a vacuum sometimes, and we don't really celebrate each other. And one thing I have my calling is to be able to say this is what the NAACP is doing, because you hear so many times that NAACP ain't doing nothing. Well, I am going to stand up in your face, anybody's face, that in the state of Maryland, we're working night and day for the people of this state. So, and stay tuned, because we're going to be doing some significant work in this election season. We have gotten the attention of the national organization, so we're going to have funding and resources to do the election year organizing, as well as opportunity to seed funding for us to have permanent staff. So look out for that as well. And we're also appealing for funding to help to market the state of Maryland. And the vision is simply to take advantage of state funding from the tourism industry to carry the state of Maryland to every convention that we participate in. So just, I know everybody like to go to conventions, get nestled into the meeting, but the reality is if we're there, we can promote not just bringing the national convention back to Maryland. And as you know, was it 5 years ago, we did it in Baltimore, but since then, the National Harbor has expanded. We now have casino gambling and this kind of thing. And those are all attractions and destinations that we should celebrate so that we can get people in the state to fill in, put some heads in beds, buy whatever Etzel is selling, whatever it is. But if we, and like I said, this conversation about Maryland in miniature is real. It's a little bit of everything in this state, and we want to celebrate it. The history of this state is significant, whether you talk about Matthias D'Souza in St. Mary's County. Calvert County has a rich history and just about everything. I can go through every county and tell you what's there. But one thing, I didn't know that Matthew Henson was from Charles County. I didn't know that. And South Charles County is also the place where John Wilkes Booth was killed. It got that far, and then they shot him down. But throughout the state, it's a beautiful state. And we're hoping to, when we go to the national convention, we hope to, do collateral material, whatever way we market the state, inspire people to come here, because it's a great place for what you call staycations at any level. Got quality hotels. We have different landmarks that are significant. So we plan to do that. And the culminating piece, to say all that, is to do this celebration of the Blacks in tourism. In this case, it's Atlantic City. So to collaborate with them on that level. So there's an exchange between the state of Maryland and the state of New Jersey. And then we close out with what we call the Purple Party. And that's a Prince theme party where everybody can listen to Prince music all night. What about that? So be on the lookout for that. But we also are adding to that proposal a HBCU tour, so that when families want to come to the state of Maryland and consider any university, they can at least look at Bowie State, Morgan State, and Maryland Eastern Shore as those options. And then if you look at south to Howard University, and then north to Lincoln, and I said Maryland Eastern Shore. So there's a lot to celebrate about this entire region. But like I said, our pitch is to try to impress upon the state Commerce Department that we can be an extension of them when we go into the conventions anyway. So be on the lookout for that. Again, we're excited about it. The only challenge this year is that, they pushed the primary back to the middle of the NAACP convention. So we got to figure out how to do a lot of work on the front end to have an impact this year. So I want to thank you both for jumping on. I think that if y'all got some outtakes, you can share them.
Okay. I hate to do it, but I got to run.
All right. Take care.
Appreciate it. And thank you for everything both of you all do.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Take care. How goes
Bye,
the hour?
guys.
All right. Peace.